we need is light.
And I know that there is someone waiting to hear me, to guide me, to love me. Good morning to those of you here and those of you online. There were two young fish who were swimming along happily, and then an older fish came from another direction and said, "Hello, boys, how's the water?" And the young fish didn't reply. And after a while, one said to the other, "What's water?" Now, why am I telling this joke? Why am I telling this particular joke? Because that's what we don't understand. That we are floating in conscious vibrations. And the only way for this world, this universe, to hold together is through the polarity of opposites, the energy of opposites. Otherwise, there would be no place. There would be no water. There would be no place for us to be unless there are opposites. So the question is answered very quickly. Yes, the satanic force does exist. It has to, for the light to exist. The darkness and the light, all the different pain and pleasure, all those different opposites are what keeps the game going. So our question is, how do we gain the strength to deal with the tests that God has given us? That's our question here. I was noticing that in the Ananda website online, when you can go up and take a look at different Sunday services that have been given over the years, and they have softened some of the titles now. So let's see if I can remember what, instead of "Does Satan Exist?", which is kind of like bam, they have it, "Encouraging Teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda on how to fight the fight against illusion," or something like that. You know, it's just much softer. However, because there needs to be a force for darkness in order for there to be a force for good, then we get to be players on a board game, so to speak. Man is like the chips on the game. And we move along by the power of our understanding. So we make all kinds of choices. It's free will time, you know. We can do as we wish, haha. And for a while, for many whiles, we don't really understand the choices that we're making and where they put our consciousness. But after a while, we wake up to that. And so we're pushed around by previous choices, because all the influences of our previous choices are still there in the water, affecting us. And then finally we turn a corner and realize that we need some guidance here. Now, as we see it, that the light is our true home, and we want to make decisions in our lives that keep us there in that light. Narayan Romano tells some fun stories of when he first went to LA and needed to do the services pretty much every Sunday. So his first service, actually, there must have been a guest minister the first time. And that guest minister was to give the service, and Narayan just stepped down from that. And suddenly the guest minister couldn't give the service. So without any preparation or anything, Narayan had to get up and give his talk. Those are the kinds of challenges, that can strengthen us or defeat us. And he just had to do it extemporaneous. I had an experience that myself one time. I did my preparation, I made my notes, I slipped them into Whispers from Eternity and came to church and looked into my bag, and I hadn't put the notes in the book in my bag. So there it was. And it's fine. You just do it. Okay, the second Sunday service, he was on and he prepared, made copious notes, just got it all together, stood up to give the talk, and it was the wrong topic. Satanic influence. Okay, the third time he prepared, and he had the habit, which I often do, although I have my whispers on a piece of paper this morning, so I don't have the book with me. But as I often do, put the notes in the whispers. And so he read the whispers beforehand, and he put the whole book with the notes on the altar. And then he turned around and suddenly could smell something. The candle was burning his notes. That's what it looks like, That's what it looks like often. It's just chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. Well, I've been experiencing quite an idyll. I love that word. I don't quite know what it means, but it sounds good. Of living with the saints, because August is the month when we do our Saints on the Lawn or Dinner on a Saint, whatever you want to call it, at the community. And it's always just such a pleasure, and it's a pleasure for every one of us to spend time with the saints. Why? Because they're the ones just like us who have started off not knowing a thing, have made all kinds of choices that were not so wise, and grew and learned until they get to the place where God is their first choice. And they grow into recognizing that relatively early in their lives. So they've been through all the same things that we've been through. And the saints are full of light, and it's wonderful to stay in the company of those souls that are full of light. And so I've been studying Master Mahashaya, who is the lovely saint that in chapter 9 of the autobiography took Master on some little experiences. And I'm going to just tell a few stories that I told the other night. I had not really ever understood totally what state of mind or why Yogananda was in the state of mind he was when he found Master Mahashaya. And he found him actually in his old boyhood home on Amherst Street. So the house where Master Mahashaya was having his school was very familiar to Yogananda. But he played a trick on him. He found out that he was there because Master Mahashaya was well known. He was a devotee of Ramakrishna, and he was the diarist of Ramakrishna. In other words, he was the scribe. He took down all notes, just complete notes of everything Ramakrishna said. In fact, he had a prodigious memory, and he would not scribe while he was sitting there in satsang. He would remember it, take it home and put it down. It reminds me of Swamiji, who also was a scribe for Master, but he would use little pieces of paper and then save all those. And when he was ready to share them with us, he wrote conversations with Yogananda. But Master M would keep this diary going for many, many, many years. So I was always curious about Yogananda's funny little attitude in that chapter, because he tricked Master Mahashaya. he just felt a little bit of lessening of his connection with Divine Mother, and he ran to Master Mahashaya and said, please, please, sir, ask her if I find any favor in her, in her company. And Master Mahashaya said, why must you test me? Well, I finally asked Murli if he could help me figure out what age Yogananda was in that time. And we figured out he was between 12 and 14. He was a teenager. Read that chapter. It's Master as teenager. It's so interesting to see it from that point of view. So he was just playing tricks, He was, but Master Mahashaya had, and remember, what the saints give to us is simply a vibration, a total loving vibration, a tuning into who we are, a total pleasure in our company. So he took Master out to the university to see what the Indians called bioscopes, which were movies. But it's interesting because Master Mahashaya, when he came into this world, he was a great intellectual. He studied very, very widely at the university. He studied Western teaching, he studied Eastern teaching. He felt like wisdom came from books. That's where he was. And so he naturally took Yogananda to the university to see the bioscopes, because he just knew what he was doing. This was a little journey for teenage Yogananda. And so they went into this boring lecture with boring bioscopes. And Master was like getting a little antsy, and Master Mahashaya just said, I see you don't like these bioscopes. I'll talk to Divine Mother about that. And then Divine Mother caused the electricity to go out, so the bioscope went down. Yogananda and Master Mahashaya raced out. You can see them. They raced out to the front of the university, and this is where Master Mahashaya gave Master a touch of cosmic consciousness. And so that's described. But I wanted to bring that story to you because it shows you the communion with saints. They're us. If we're in a playful stage in our life, they are playfully teaching us. If we are in a serious stage in our life, they're seriously teaching us. When Master M himself, when he was a family man actually, and he was trying to draw wisdom out of books, he was brought by a nephew to see Ramakrishna, who was a great, wild, and lovely avatar for the time. He was just before Yogananda was born. And Master M went in to see him, and Ramakrishna recognized him. And Master M was a scholar. And the first thing that Ramakrishna said is, wisdom does not come from books. And Master Mahashaya was like, ay, what a hit to the ego. So, down he comes into the proper place to be in order to receive the love and teachings from his guru. Yogananda once said, one of Satan's tricks is to convince people that he doesn't exist. I think that's very interesting to contemplate. Because if we're not aware that there is a force against which we need to strive, against which we need to bring all of our energy into play, the world is very magnetic. And I think that's why we spend so many lifetimes being interested. There's a lot to be interested in. Then I spent some time with the curé d'Ars. He was the priest of the city of Ars in France. And he was born during the French Revolution, or just before the French Revolution. And in his childhood, he was exceptionally devoted to the church and to Mother Mary. And as a little tiny boy, he would go to Mass with his mother every morning. Now, he was a man who struggled concerning studies. He just couldn't learn Latin, and all he wanted from his early childhood was to be a priest. When he was young and his family were farmers, he would take a little statue of Mother Mary and walk behind his brothers. This was before he could really do any work in the fields. And he would throw the little statue of Mother Mary ahead of him and then run toward it and then pick it up and then throw her down and pick it up. That was one of his little games. And when they stopped for lunch, he would take that little statue and he would figure out, wherever they were on the grounds, he would figure out a way to build a little altar and put her in for the afternoon lunch, and then teach all of his little friends how to make reverence to Mother Mary. So that's where he started. And because he had this challenging aspect to his journey of not even knowing how to learn French, learn Latin, he just couldn't do it. Well, it seemed to be an enormous block. It seemed to be that there was this force up against him becoming a priest. But he never, ever let up on that ambition, so to speak. And because he was so magnetic in his love of God and Mary, he just drew people around him who would say to the officials at the university, this man is clearly a priest, we've got to get him there. And so forces were moved, and Jean Vianney finally got through and was able to become a priest. And they sent him to this little town called Ars. It was just down from Lyon, and it had 230 people. Now, what had happened was, during the French Revolution, the churches were closed, the priests were hunted as criminals. You had to be very daring to keep having Mass, and his family did get in touch with priests who would come surreptitiously to the house. But meanwhile, many, many people just didn't have the church and didn't seek it out. And so this town had just let it go. They had no way of seeking the light and no interest in seeking the light. And it was a town of 230, and there were 4 taverns and dance halls. This is where Jean Vianney was sent. But that man had so much light inside of him. He just started right in and said, come back to church. Oh, but we have to work in the fields. Oh, but we're so used to going to the tavern. Come back to church. And he was very charming in his little talks to them. He was very person to person. It was just always from the heart. And began to not only bring his townspeople back, but thousands began to come to Ars. And now you wonder, well, there was no communication like we know it today. What's going on here? Well, clearly the magnetism of his service was just such a bright light. And so people felt it. They could feel that quality of light, that quality of love. And when he did the Mass, he felt when he held the wafer that in the wafer he could see the image of Christ. That was the extent of his, that was the depth of his devotion. And so that magnetism began to draw more and more people. So it was not only that he brought the town back to the church, was what the church wanted, but then by sort of the time when he was like in his 50s or 60s, there were 20,000 people a year coming to his church. And he was just totally who he was. And Satan didn't like this. And so there were many, many stories of people hearing sounds coming out of his house at night. Crashing of pots and pans, or the devil was coming after him. The sound of horses racing through his house. All kinds of weird things would happen. It's just the way it was. And the interesting thing, his devotion was so strong, he spent 16 to 18 hours in the confessional. He set aside 2 hours to sleep, and then the devil came after him. So the saints are often the ones who do the good fight, who fight the good fight, who open our eyes to say, if he can handle that, I can handle what's on my plate. And I know that there is someone waiting to hear me, to guide me, to love me. It's just, we're not like the fish wondering what's water. We know that we're swimming in a world that offers both. And we have the great good fortune of having the moment where we've decided that Yogananda is the one that can bring us out of all the darkness that is accumulative within. And just, there are so many ways throughout the day that we can live in that light. And I'm so grateful to all of those who came to the class, because what it did was create a little sanctuary there under the canopy at the community. And I feel the light of those saints still in my consciousness. Both of those saints knew in their heart of hearts that no matter how hard things got, and no matter how challenging, their lives were very much oriented to service to their people. Master Mahashaya would make food for his students. He would tell them how to sit at table. He would tell them which place the fork went and the knife went. He was very... and Master Mahashaya and the Curadar, he also came from a very good family who had, family manners, and he taught them to all of his people. They were tireless. They wanted as many people as possible to live in the right spirit, to live in graciousness, to live in a spirit of generosity. And they both knew that love would win the day. Love always wins the day, no matter what our challenges are. The love and the light always wins the day. And I'm prompted to tell you this story, which is not about the saints, but because it's just the end of the Olympics, and the Olympics always bring up all kinds of interesting stories of overcoming. I am reminded of the 2005 Olympics. That was a year that a Kenyan runner named Abel Muktai, he was running, and he was almost the finish line, and there was a Spanish runner just behind him. And he suddenly, just at that point, the front runner, he got confused. He got totally confused, and he stopped. He thought he had won, and the runner behind him just went up and pushed, go, go, and he won. It was so interesting to me how the reporters had no way, the newspaper reporters had no way of understanding that. They had no way of understanding. And so the reporter said to him, "Why did you do that?" And Ivan's first answer was, "My dream is that someday we can have a kind of community where we push and help each other to win." Okay, then the reporter said, "Why did you let the Kenyan win?" And Ivan said, "I didn't let him win. He was going to win. The race was his." And the reporter said, "But you could have won." And Ivan said, "What would be the merit of my winning? What would be the honor in that medal? What would my mother think of that?" And I think of that as Divine Mother. So I want to end with this reading from Whispers. I'm just going to read part of it. This is from Yogananda. You must never leave courage. You must never lose courage. Divine Mother sent me to pilot you out of the clouds of your mind. Everyone's difficulty is different, and he or she has to win the test of karma. Overcome all by constant inward calling on God and utmost devotion in words, thought, action, and obedience to Guru. Your troubles I do not mind. I will never give up my job about you. It is better to conquer one evil and not live with it forever. Never for a moment identify yourself with momentary flashes of error. Have no fear, even though I am gone from your visible eyes. You will never be alone. I may not scold you then, but I will ever be with you. And through Divine Mother, guard you from all harm, and will constantly whisper to you guidance through your loving self. Thank you. And will constantly whisper to you guidance through your loving self.
Out in the sun.